Good afternoon, and welcome to this joint subcommittee hearing of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific and the Armed Services Subcommittee on Sea Power and Projection Forces. I want to thank Chairman Forbes for joining this afternoon with us and collaborating with the Asia Pacific Subcommittee on the critically important topic of today's hearing, which is the issue of maritime security in the South and East China Seas. I also want to thank Mr. Ami Bera for serving as the acting ranking member for Asia and Pacific Subcommittee, and Ranking Member McIntyre for also joining us this afternoon. We look forward to an excellent hearing. Today's hearing could not come at a more critical time, as we have seen over the last few months a growing level of tension in the Asia-Pacific region as a result of unilateral actions taken by China to exert its control over disputed maritime territories. We are witnessing a dangerously aggressive China, trying to assert greater control over these territories to change the regional status quo in a way that violates core principles of international law. The implications of these actions for the United States are substantial, as we have strategic and economic interests that are increasingly threatened by the growing tension and confrontational incidents in these waters. An American presence in Asia is built on maintaining peace and stability that is upheld through respect for international law, freedom of navigation, and unhindered lawful commerce in the maritime regions. This is pursued through our alliances with Japan, South Korea, Australia, Thailand, and the Philippines, in addition to our steadfast relationships with Taiwan and Singapore, and evolving relationships with Vietnam and Indonesia. In recognition of the region's growing importance, the U.S. policy rebalance toward Asia largely served as an acknowledgment of our long-term goal of ensuring we remain firmly engaged in this region. This so-called pivot came at a crucial time, no doubt long overdue, because our regional friends and allies needed assurance of sustained U.S. commitment. While I may take issue with the lack of depth of the administration's rebalance strategy, one thing is certain: we do have a grounded diplomatic, economic, and military commitment to the region. There is no other issue right now in the Asia-Pacific region more worrisome than the rising tensions we are seeing as a result of China's efforts to coercively change and destabilize the regional status quo. While I am disappointed by China's behavior, I am also not terribly surprised that it is failing to behave as a responsible global actor. Among the most prevalent reasons why China is motivated to fight for its claims, which include oil and gas reserves, fishing rights, control of shipping lanes, and the establishment of security buffer zones, its view that its maritime territorial claims have deep historical roots is the most problematic. There are a number of instances in history where nationalism was used to further international political goals with damaging consequences. Take, for instance, the incident when, back in 1983, Soviet jet fighters intercepted a Korean Airlines passenger flight allegedly flying in Russian airspace, and with heat-seeking missiles shot down into the China Sea, killing all 268 passengers and crew members, including a U.S. congressman. President Reagan called the incident a massacre, and tensions between the U.S. and Soviet Union dramatically increased. Similar motivations were behind the April 2001 Hainan Island incident, when a People's Liberation Army Navy jet recklessly or intentionally collided with a U.S. EP-3 aircraft flying within China's exclusive economic zone. And now China's unilateral decision to establish an air defense identification zone in the East China Sea is its latest move to act upon historically contentious maritime territorial disputes with Japan. This move was further intensified this month when China established a new Hainan administrative zone and ordered all foreign fishing vessels to obtain approval before fishing in or surveying two-thirds of the South China Sea. Both these actions have only further inflamed what former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd called an Asian tinderbox on water. While China's actions over the past few years in piecemeal may seem small, as a whole they depict a fundamental change in China's foreign policy and strategy. It is no longer following a policy of peaceful resolution or taking actions that align with international law, if it ever did in the first place. China is attempting to take the disputed territories by gradual force, under the guise and misguided hope that Japan, Southeast Asian nations, and the U.S. will just grudgingly accepted. This provocative behavior, as the Obama administration has called it, unnecessarily raises tensions, threatening the security and stability of the region, targeting key U.S. allies, and challenging the U.S. presence as a Pacific power. As we have seen, players in the region are responding. Japan is taking steps to reshape its own national security apparatus to better respond to the rise of Chinese threats, a policy I support. The Philippines has also been vocal about its disagreements with China's territorial claims, requesting arbitration against China under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea last year. Reports this weekend indicate the Philippines is building its military presence in the Zhangyi Island, and China is now insisting that it plans to attack Philippine forces on the island to recover territory that Philippines allegedly stole. This all follows the administration's decision to send B-52 bombers out of Guam to fly through the new defense zone in the East China Sea, and its plans to give nearly $32 million to Vietnam to strengthen maritime security, with a promise to provide the Philippines with $40 million to do the same. While these actions should send a strong message to China to be wary of taking further provocative actions, we cannot be sure. As we saw when the USS Cowpens narrowly avoided collision with a Chinese warship in December, heightened tensions between the U.S. and China, and also our allies, are only increasing the risk of miscalculation in the region. I believe steps taken by the U.S. and Japan to revise our alliance's bilateral defense guidelines to better deal with new contingencies is a good step, as is the consideration to locate U.S. troops in the Philippines on a rotational basis, as we've done in Australia. At the same time, I believe the administration needs to do a better job at understanding and predicting China's strategic goals and clearly conveying that the U.S. is committed and prepared to work with and support our regional allies. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses this afternoon regarding their views on how the U.S. can better manage obligations to our friends and allies to limit conflict with China in the coming months. I want to again thank Chairman Forbes for his subcommittee for collaborating on today's hearing, and I'd now like to recommend Chairman Forbes for the purpose of making an opening statement.